God is making this world a better place through the things we do when we live Jesus' way. When we choose to be peacemakers, when we choose to give more than take, when we honor our Creator, then we're living in the Jesus way. God is making this world a better place. God is making this world a better place. God is making this world a better place through the things we do when we live Jesus' way. When we choose to act with justice, honor and respect every race, when the earth knows it can trust us, then we're living in the Jesus way. God is making this world a better place. God is making this world a better place. God is making this world a better place through the things we do when we live Jesus' way. Through the things we do when we live Jesus' way. Through the things we do when we live Jesus' way.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Oh, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second.
Welcome to worship at the McPherson Church of the Brethren. We are an open and affirming congregation that strives to be hospitable and attentive to all of creation. We do not always meet that goal, and we have our share of ups and downs. But in the midst of it all, we continue to listen to God's call on our individual lives and the life of this congregation. We continue to seek to follow Jesus, peacefully, simply, together. We are humbled you have chosen to worship with us. Welcome.
Good morning to the McPherson Church of the Brethren. For those of you who are here, for those of you on Channel 13, for those of you who are streaming, for all the different ways that you can watch our service, we are grateful for that opportunity to do it that way. Joys and concerns following that wonderful, joyous video of Bible school. What a wonderful experience they must have had. Any other joys, concerns, announcements?
Catherine Whitaker. I just want to acknowledge you would have noticed 2 bouquets as you came into the worship area, and those are a gift to us from the Grosbaugh family, who celebrated Alberta's life yesterday morning. The bouquet here in the front is a gift to us from Joya Largent and Jared Cutler, who celebrated their marriage yesterday in Wichita, and they wanted to share that bouquet.
Thank you.
This has been a joyous weekend. I'm Leela Beam, and yes, I came to the Bible school program on Friday, and it was such a joy to see our church full, almost full of children and volunteers taking care of Bible school. That was such a joy. And Alberta Grosbaugh's funeral, Lamont, you did a superb job in leading that. And Julia's wedding, it was just so fun to gather around a table with friends, and it was just such a joyous occasion. And this week, Michael had another grandbaby. Bennett Robert was born on Wednesday, and he has 3 grandchildren now. So just a joyous week.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mona Lang, if you don't know who I am. I just wanted to share with everyone that the McPherson Community Theater is putting on The Little Mermaid, and the first show is this Thursday at the Opera House. There are 8 shows, and it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the following Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we would be so happy for you to come out and enjoy the show.
You saw in the video the goats. You have one more day if you would like to go out there and see 82 goats that are on the Cedars campus helping us mow. These animals eat all the poison ivy, poison oak, and noxious weeds for us, so we don't have to use chemicals. So it's a neat experience, and Kurt Wagner, many of you know Kurt, found this gal that's what she does. She travels around and brings her herd of goats. So she'll be back in September to do another fall mowing. So.
John Flory Schrock. I just wanted to let people know that the Meadowlark Trail training is still going to happen this afternoon out at Shawnee and 13th at 4 o'clock. If you drive out, park along 13th north of Shawnee, not south of Shawnee. So 4 o'clock, and afterwards we'll have some cold drinks at Bev Martin's house, and she suggests bringing lots of bug spray and sunscreen.
Thank you. Let's take this opportunity to center for worship.
On behalf of the Faith Formation team, as I tell you about our week of Bible school, I will be saying we, and I mean our Faith Formation team that did a lot of the organizing for the week. It was a great week of Bible school. I tried to think of all the words that I could use to describe it. Fantastic, amazing, thrilling. We could go on and on. If you've been with us the past few weeks, you will know that our theme was Passport to Peace. This is curriculum that is prepared by Church of the Brethren and the Mennonite Church together. We, the Church of the Brethren, Monitor Church, and the First Mennonite Church of McPherson sponsored this Bible school together. One of the goals of the week was to learn to become peacemakers and to make peace a way of life. Our theme song refrain went like this: grab your passport to peace, passport to peace. Here, there, anywhere, God's love will lead us. Round the world or just down the street, grab your passport, passport to peace. Well, the phrase around the world we picked up on, and our mission offering, outreach offering for the world was Heifer International. And through Heifer, animals are given for poor people around the world. We decided, since there were goats in town, that we would have a goal of raising enough money. We did it by the kids bringing quarters. We had the goal of buying one goat for $120. Well, surprise, surprise, we got enough for 2 goats. So we'll be sending $240 to Heifer. And for the part just down the street, around the world, or just down the street, we chose to visit the Oak Harbor cottages. And there we were able to see the house that our church is building under Al Wagner's supervision. And we were able to tour one of the houses that's being lived in. The couple that are managing Oak Harbor Cottages invited us in to see the inside when it is furnished. So that was a great opportunity for the kids to see what we can do when we see there are people in need in our community and how we can respond. Well, we had 40 kids register for Bible school, and 37 of them showed up. One family encountered COVID right before Bible school, so they couldn't come. We had 37 kids. We had put out the call for volunteers to you, and you responded splendidly. We had 28 adults, 4 or 5 of them from the Mennonite church, and 28 adults and 11 middle school kids. So altogether, we had 39 volunteers for 37 kids. Yay! You did well. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts for all of the hard work, the creativity, and the time that you all gave this week for our Bible school. And we thank all of those of you who also brought supplies. Remember, we were collecting things back here at the fireplace, and you did a wonderful job of bringing what we needed. So thank you for that. I'm not going to try to tell you who our 28 and 11 volunteers were, our 39 volunteers. I might miss somebody and embarrass myself. But I do want to point out 3 people, well, more than 3. First of all, I'd like to thank Dan Lichty for leading our opening and closing worships. This was key to setting the stage for the day. And he worked with a team of 4 of our youth who gave a drama every day. And it was terrific. So we thank you very much, Dan, for your leadership in that area. We also want to thank Carol Ward and Marta Mormon, who led our singing and taught the songs. That was great. And I want to point out that Daisy Friesen and her team of Mabel Friesen, Marlene Unruh, and Janice Powers did a terrific job in the kitchen. I don't know how many of you know, but that team every day prepared a casserole to send home with every volunteer. I was a recipient. It's so great. What a good service. We go home with food for lunch. We hadn't been there all morning to work on lunch, so we go home with casserole. Thank you, Daisy and team. All of our volunteers really made the week. I also want to thank McPherson College. They loaned us 3 vans so we could carry our kids across town on our 2 different field trips. So thank you, McPherson College. It was a great week. Thank you to all the volunteers, all of you who provided materials, and all of you who brought kids every morning for a wonderful experience. We praise God for each of you.
Grab your passport to peace, passport to peace. Here, there, anywhere God's love will lead us. Round the world or just down the street. Grab your passport, passport to peace. We refuse to hate, we refuse to fight. We will speak up for what is right. We will talk it out, we will listen well. We will share God's love and offer help. Grab your passport to peace, passport to peace. Here, there, anywhere God's love will lead us. Round the world or just down the street. Grab your passport, passport to peace. We can make new friends, we can say how we feel. We can offer a hand or share a meal. We can ask for help when things are so wrong. We can join in God's story, we can join in God's song. Grab your passport to peace, passport to peace. Here, there, anywhere God's love will lead us. Round the world or just down the street. Grab your passport, passport to peace. Sometimes God's way of peace is saying sorry. Sometimes God's way of peace is saying stop. Sometimes God's way of peace is asking for help. Sometimes it's letting our anger drop. Sometimes God's way of peace is saying sorry. Sometimes God's way of peace is saying stop. Sometimes God's way of peace is asking for help. Sometimes it's letting our anger drop. Grab your passport to peace, passport to peace. Here,
And Carolyn and Lois, thank you. You didn't specifically name yourselves, but thank you. That's a lot of work. Becky, I'm sorry, Lucy. Lucy has the children's story. Would the children come forward for the children's time? Do you want to use a lavalier or just hold this? Can you hold that? That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. Hi, good morning. Hi, Ritter. How are you all doing today?
Good.
Good?
Yes.
Okay. So, I saw all of you at Bible school this week. That was a lot of fun.
Yes.
And today we're going to be reading a book about peace, which is what we were learning about all of last week. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about what we did together, okay? So, do you want to hold the microphone for me? Yeah, thank you. All right, ready? Can you all see it? Here, I'll scoot back a little bit. Can you all see the book? Okay. Peace is making new friends. Peace is keeping the water blue for all the fish. Peace is listening to different kinds of music. Peace is saying you're sorry when you hurt someone. Peace is helping your neighbors. Peace is giving shoes to someone who needs them. Peace is planting a tree. Peace is sharing a meal. Peace is everyone having a home. That's nice, isn't it? Yeah. Peace is growing a garden. Peace is taking a nap. That's very peaceful. Peace is learning another language. Peace is having enough pizza in the world for everyone. Peace is keeping someone warm. Peace is new babies being born. Peace is being free. Peace is traveling to different places. Peace is wishing on a star. Peace is being who you are. So this week at Bible school, we did a lot of those things. We traveled to different places each day to learn about peace. We worked on new languages when we sung our songs, and we all learned about how to be peacemakers. So how can you all be peacemakers this next week? Do you have any ideas? Yeah?
You could help someone if they need it.
That's a good idea. What about you, Vivi?
One of my brother's friends didn't get to go to camp, so we can make a care package for him.
That's an awesome idea of how to bring peace. Ritter, do you have any ideas of how to be a peacemaker?
I said no.
No? Okay, sorry. So to end today, I want you all to help me. So during Bible school, we all memorized a saying about how we could be peaceful to everyone, all of our neighbors, okay? So we worked on it during story. Can you all do it with me? You ready? You have heard people say to love your neighbors and hate your enemies. But I tell you to love your enemies and pray for anyone who mistreats you. Good job, friends. Okay, I'll see you next week. Yes, go ahead.
As we continue in worship, please accept these words. Jesus called many people from many walks of life to leave their own ways and be disciples. Jesus taught many people to seek the last, the least, the lost, offering kindness and restorative righteousness. May we hear God's call and lift our focus from our differences and our divides. May we once again leave our own ways for God's ways. May we act justly, love with mercy, and walk humbly. Please rise and join in singing, For We Are Strangers No More.
Please be seated.
Thank you for your continued financial donations. You may give online at macbrethren.org. That's maccobb@macbrethren.org. If you are worshiping with us in person, you may place your gift in the offering box at the back of the sanctuary. Just slip it through the slot in the top of the box. Or you may mail your gift to the church office at 200 North Carey Street, McPherson, Kansas 67460. Or hand deliver your check to the church office. Just push it through the mail slot at the Education Building. If you join our worship from afar, please donate to local needs in your area. Thank you for sharing.
As a grounding for our focus this morning, please accept these words of scripture from the prophet Micah, Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God.
Okay, I'm going to sit there, yes, so Kirk, then Carol, Craig, down. I'm making the injured guy walk. Wow. The McPherson Church of the Brethren has always been a church of action. We are a congregation of doers. That said, we recently adopted a plan of action that identified some major goals with very tangible actions. And we're up here today as a result of our church saying that partnering for racial justice was important. And so I give a shout out to the messenger whenever I can. And so last year in the October issue, they do a media review. And it just so happened the review is on this book, How to Fight Racism. And so I'm thinking, well, we need to do something sooner rather than later. And so here we are, a book study using Jamar Tisby's book, How to Fight Racism. And Eric, if you can put that first, okay, thank you. Oh, there it is. So you see the title of the book, the author, and you see the 10 of us that were part of this book study. There are 6 of us seated up here today, but you're going to actually hear from 8 of us. And if we could have that next slide then. Okay, so I've already mentioned the Jesus in the Neighborhood, us being an outgrowth of that. However, the goal that we are embracing and hope to do some really big things in the years to come is partnering for racial justice. So how do we partner? And so we kind of reach beyond ourselves. And so thankfully, we have the deacon from our neighborhood church, Morning Star Baptist, here with us, Craig Hart. And another member of our group who's not here, Shai Hankus, the student body president of McPherson College, was part of our group. So you can see the names, or you did see the names of all 10. But McPherson College and Morning Star are part of this group. And we met for 10 sessions at the Cedars. Thanks, Lamont. The Walnut Training Room was a great location for us. We met on Sunday afternoons from 2:15 to 3:30. If Jamar Tisby could hear that, he'd probably shudder because that's not enough time. But we tried to make it work, and I think we did that. So I think without any further ado, you're all waiting to hear from others, and next up is our religion prof, Kirk McGregor.
Jamar Tisby's book, How to Fight Racism, is really a godsend to the church because it provides a wonderful treatment of how racial justice initiatives and being anti-racist, looking out for our Black sisters and brothers and people of color flow directly from the gospel message of Jesus Christ and from biblical theology. I was so excited when I first got a hold of this book last year because I knew that I was teaching this spring my religion and politics course. And one thing that I always talk about in religion and politics, obviously, is the quest for racial justice. And previous to this book being published, I would just be drawing my own conclusions from biblical teaching, the message of Jesus, and I would draw on various Christian thinkers who had written for racial justice out of a biblical framework, like Martin Luther King Jr. I had students read Letter from the Birmingham Jail, James Cone, Dolores Williams, and other writers. However, one thing that really has disturbed me over the past 4 years or so on the political scene is the polarization that has featured around so-called critical race theory. And there are several students I know in my religion and politics class who would say, if they heard any anti-racist messaging or anti-racist initiatives, they would dismiss it as, well, that's just critical race theory. And if you have watched various television shows and networks, you probably know which ones, you can hear people on the political right saying that critical race theory is nothing more than cultural Marxism, and you have people on the left who deny that critical race theory has anything to do with Marxism, and you have a variety of positions in between. And so I knew that many of my students, coming from what they would consider conservative Christian backgrounds, would be very skeptical of critical race theory. So I posed this challenge to my students. I asked them, whatever you think about critical race theory, I leave that to you. My question is, can we reach the same anti-racist conclusions that critical race theory does on a completely different basis? Can we reach those same anti-racist conclusions on the basis of the teaching of Jesus, on the basis of biblical theology? And Jamar Tisby's book brilliantly shows that you can, that anti-racism follows inescapably from the teachings of Jesus. And so if students wanted to be racial justice deniers, then they would kind of be backed into the corner of saying, well, Jesus got it wrong, or the Bible got it wrong. And that was a rather uncomfortable position for them to be in. So students were able to see what it really meant in this issue of racial justice to be a follower of Jesus.
Author Jamar Tisby speaks about the most frequent question he encountered when he was asked about the subject of racism. That question was, what can we do? And in his book, Tisby presents us with the arc of racial justice. I believe there's a slide for that. The arc of racial justice is a practical model which Tisby created to help us to try to answer the question, what can we do? This is an acronym, ARC, which stands for Awareness, Relationships, and Commitment. Fighting racism starts with awareness. It means we have to acquire facts and information, learn the history of racism, and explore our own personal experiences with racism. So as I reflected on my level of awareness, I realized that until 2020 and the emergence of the stories with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and when they were in forefront in the news, that I really, up to that point, hadn't thought a whole lot about the state of racism in this country, or I hadn't pondered it deeply enough. In fact, for me, learning the history of the Tulsa Massacre last year, as they celebrated the 100th anniversary, was eye-opening and shocking for me. So I found it important to reflect on my personal experiences, and one thing the book encouraged us to do was write a racial autobiography. So I sat down to do that, and I reflected on my years as a child growing up in Mound Ridge, as a college student, as a high school teacher in Kansas and Texas, and asked myself the questions of when, where, how, if I even witnessed or experienced racism. And that was a good exercise for me to do. The R of the ARC refers to relationships. Tisby says, quote, "One cannot pursue true racial justice without authentic relationships with people who are different from you." So to really internalize the need for change in society, we have to get to know people who are impacted negatively by the policies and the attitudes in our society. And I was so thankful to have the opportunity to get to know Craig Hart and Shai Hankus and hear their perspectives as persons of color living in McPherson. Finally, the C of the ARC model refers to commitment, which is taking a stand and about our actions to promote racial justice. So we have to be willing to step out of our comfort zone to get to know people different than ourselves, to speak out when we see injustice and inequities, and to commit to doing whatever actions we can do in our communities to bring about change. One strong message that resonated with me was that as the author said, that the force or the reason behind the actions we choose to take must first be love and concern for our neighbor. Committing to take actions for change and racial justice out of love for our neighbor is exactly what is needed as our church embraces the plan Jesus in the Neighborhood.
Reading this book was a real challenge for me because I've grown up some in Africa, so I feel like, oh, well, black people, yeah, I'm used to that. That's nothing new. However, there's a real difference between, I guess, living immersed where you are the minority and when you're just in relationship with people who are the minority. And this book brought a different perspective than a lot of things that I've talked with people about. And I really appreciated that it was very, very biblically based and not just, socially or politically based. And it also made me realize that everybody has a perspective, coming at things from their own perspective. And even though I maybe come at it from a perspective of, I've lived a lot around black people, everybody kind of has their own perspective, and being pushed with what your perspective is, or maybe even the awareness of what your perspective is and how that affects how you relate to people, was definitely addressed in this book.
I am Miriam Hoover, and I want to share with you some of my experiences in the study that we had on race relations. I became interested in that by noticing in a church bulletin that the class was going to be held here at the church, and from way early experience in my life, I had an interest in race relations. And this interest came about when my father came home one time in the evening, and I was about 7 years old, and he had a black man with him. And he said, "This man's going to be sleeping in our house tonight because nobody will let him sleep in the hotels or the inns." And there was no more statements made about it, and I don't remember who had to give up a bed or anything like that. But anyway, he was a welcome guest in our home. And that made me puzzled, because I remembered singing little songs in Sunday school like, Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, red or yellow, black or white, all are precious in his sight. So why was something wrong with a black man sleeping in somebody's house? This was a bother to me. So when I heard that there was going to be a study about it, I thought I would see if they would accept an old lady. And they reluctantly did. I shouldn't say it that way. They welcomed me very much. In fact, in the first session, I told the story of why I was interested, and there was a person that said I should not miss any more sessions. I should be there. And so I felt welcome. The thing I think that I enjoyed the most about the study was hearing from the people in the study report their findings and feelings about race relations. And also, I learned from the book, the workbook, that there are things that we can do as a church related to race relations. We could possibly set up a voting booth where people could come and do their voting, or we could go out and urge people to vote, or we could get someone to go pick up people who needed to vote. There are lots of things that we could do, and these things were quite interesting to me. I think we had a wonderful study, and we certainly had a great leadership. It was no time wasted in that class, and we all felt well rewarded, I'm sure. Thank you for listening.
My name is Elaine Fleenor, and I thought this was a very helpful course on race relations. I feel that improved race relations is definitely relevant to our denomination's theme currently of Jesus in the neighborhood. It is challenging to think about what God calls us to do in response to this. Dr. Tisby, the author of our book, gives many positive examples of what can be done. His suggestions are grounded in his Christian faith. He also makes the point that careful planning must be done in order for improvement to occur. There is much to be learned from the experiences of others, such as Dr. Tisby. While studying our text, I recalled that around 1980, when I was working as a school psychologist in Lyons, we had quite an influx of Hispanic families. Of course, a different group from the families, the African-American families described in our text, but I think there are commonalities in terms of their needs and how we can respond to that. Anyway, in Lyons, in 1970, there was a welcoming attitude toward the new group of people. The district funded a teacher and materials for bilingual classes. Church services were regularly held in both English and Spanish. A family-owned newspaper was very friendly to the Hispanics. The Lyons State Bank had a bilingual teller in the bank. These are only a few of the adaptations which I observed for the new group of folks. One of the immigrants was heard saying, "Lyons, Kansas is a place where our people can get a fair shake." I can envision now doing some updates of interviews of the original migrant groups, perhaps other newcomers. Perhaps there are written records of responses which could be used to plan future actions for newcomers. It makes me wonder what people would say about the welcome which is given to new non-Caucasian persons coming to McPherson.
I'm Kara Hudson. Hello. There I am. I'm Kara Hudson. I wanted to share a little bit about my motivation to join this group. And then I have a couple quotes from Tisby that I want to share. So my motivation primarily came from caring for this community. And I moved here within the past year. And I really want to be proud of McPherson and the McPherson area for having a welcoming spirit for all different kinds of people. And one of the things I learned in this class from Craig and from Shai is that we don't always have a welcoming spirit, and often, in fact, we don't. And so that was part of my motivation. I also wanted to learn how to best support ethnic minority students in school libraries, which is where I work. And then also just recognizing my own racism from growing up in a privileged white family and in a privileged white body. The first quote that I wanted to share from Tisby was, "We need to put creative, constructive pressure on people to change their views for the sake of racial justice." And when I read that, it right away made me think of Brethren tradition and the Brethren idea of getting in the way, which we talk a lot about when we talk about peacemaking and nonviolence. And that quote, I'm just going to read it again. "We need to put creative, constructive pressure on people to change their views for the sake of racial justice." That just made me think that perhaps as a denomination, as part of our nonviolent call, we need to also be getting in the way of oppressive systems and racist systems in our country and in our communities. The second quote that I want to share is, "Hope is not blind optimism. Hope is a realistic assessment of things as they are, with the faith that things can be different."
My name's Craig Hart. I'm a deacon at Morning Star Baptist Church, and I guess you're wondering why I'm last. If it's 1 o'clock and y'all still sitting in here, it's not my fault. Blame it on Marty and take it up with God. Fighting racism, living in McPherson. I mean, growing up in the sticks of Mississippi, Marty invited me to a book study. Really? To fight racism? I don't think so. I thank God that I actually, and just give it honor to God for me even being here. Because it was God that just says, hey, look, fighting racism, some of us have to remove ourselves and allow God to come through us and work through us. Because fighting racism is actually stepping outside of your comfort zone and doing something that's uncomfortable. So coming to the class and hearing Miss Miriam and, oh my goodness, 103 years old, I got to hear what you got to say about racism. You had to grow up racist. She crushed me. A black man coming home to her house at 7 years old, oh, she's done. It's okay. Black people are okay. And I just kept hearing the stories in the class. These stories are nothing like what I grew up in the sticks of Mississippi. And I said, I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all brethren, church members, y'all are some nice people. I grew up in the sticks of Mississippi, and I didn't like white people. 21 years in the military, and I end up in McPherson, Kansas. God has a sense of humor, y'all. Married to a white woman. 2 beautiful young sons. And that's when I really learned that racism is not racism until it's in your front yard, until it's in your backyard, until you got 2 biracial sons that you got to fight for. And that's coming from my father-in-law. I didn't say ex-father-in-law. I'm divorced from his daughter, but he's still my father-in-law. And church, I will tell you, that's when I found out that a lot of us is not affected by racism because, yes, I have to say this, Professor, Brother Kurt, until Dwayne comes home with you, now you got to fight. You got to fight when Dwayne can't fight. So I'm not telling anyone to go out and adopt a little black kid. But what I am asking, learning from this book and Jamar Tisby, is some of us have to be a Francis. Brother Francis came to Morning Star Baptist Church talking about white privilege. And my pastor eyes got, I don't know, they got about this big around. He's like, what are you talking about, white privilege? I thank God for Francis, because Brother Francis stepped outside of his comfort zone, y'all, and came to Morning Star. And sometimes on Wednesday night Bible study, there are more Caucasians in our Bible study than there are African Americans, all because he stepped outside of his comfort zone. I like to fish. My nephew, he's a minister. He just left, went to Mississippi. He came up here and he says, hey, why don't you in the pool? Why don't you in the pulpit? When you going to start preaching? I said, this is my pulpit. I meet more Caucasians out on the lake and in the woods hunting. And my first question to them is, are you a believer? And when the words are yes, I say, good. That make us blood relatives. That's my icebreaker, y'all. And some of us have to get outside of our comfort zone to fight racism. And like I said, I've heard a lot of Caucasians say, no, I'm not racist. No, you're not racist. I agree with you. But when it's in your front yard, when Ukraine comes knocking in your front yard here in the United States, you will understand war. You will understand what it is to fight. You will understand what it is to fight for someone that can't fight for themselves. I just looked at the census this morning, and it's 28,543 people in McPherson. The last time I looked, it was 202 African Americans. I did Black history here in McPherson. The first African American that came here was 1888. I was shocked to see that he has a headstone in the graveyard here in McPherson. When there was a time in McPherson, African Americans couldn't even live past First Street. And we're talking 1990. If you wasn't a part or found yourself a part of McPherson, the cops basically pushed you right on to Hutch or back to Wichita or to Salina. And about coming to McPherson in 1992, someone asked me, hey, do you think the prices are too high because they don't want African Americans to live here? I said, I don't know. I could live anywhere I want to. I serve a big God. I don't think little. And I thank God that I have friends that have told me that I couldn't do what you do in McPherson. I thank God that God chose you. And a minister puts it best this way. He's been on mission trips all around the world, and he says, I thank God, Craig, that you've been around the world, but he sent you on a mission trip to McPherson. And if you ever find yourself on a mission trip, and I know you do mission trips here, this is what it feels like sometimes when you're outnumbered, when you just don't speak the language. So therefore, I say, learn the language. Learn the language. Step outside your comfort zone. And the main words is just don't be lazy. Because the first thing we do when we get outside of a country, don't anyone speak English here? No, I learned to speak the language when you have to deal with 32 different nationalities at one time. And I'm here in McPherson, and I'll end it with this. I have found myself trying to show Caucasians that I'm not what you see on TV. I can live anywhere I want to live. I can do whatever I want to do. But a lot of times I have to ask God in prayer when I wake up in the morning to remove Craig. Because the old Craig, I told y'all, he didn't like Caucasians. But I know Jesus do. I know he does. He loves us all. I listened to the book about peace. And we have to humble ourselves as little children. Step outside our comfort zone. And that will be the point of when you fight racism. And I tell you, brother, thank you, man, for inviting me. And I thank God. I'll come down here. I'm not going to make you walk to the other end. I don't.
You mind just holding that for me?
No, I don't.
Okay. Just wanted to give a visual here. In our church office will be the materials housed for future book studies. And so we all benefited, and I would say I feel closer to each and every person here as a result of this study, even this one. So we've got a book, we've got a workbook, and we have a good old-fashioned CD. And really, these materials provide structure and really a great study. Okay, Eric, you want to put that last slide up? Yeah. So the struggle against racism and this journey towards racial justice isn't just about how it changes the world, it's about how it changes you. And so my brother here, when I was twisting his arm to join us, said, okay, what's the end game? Well, for starters, it's how it changes us. Thank you.
Marty, thank you for setting the example we have set all along in the strategic planning process. There's a system, there's a network, there's a support group, but when you have a passion, just dive in and start doing that. So thank you, Marty, for grabbing a hold and getting that all together and diving in. And anybody else who wants to do that study, I think, is it not true that Jamar recommends that you do that with a small group so you can have an intimate conversation, like 10 or 12? Is the limit. So we'll have those materials in the office, and if you have a group of you, and I think you guys particularly paid attention to the mixture of the group, to male, to female, to age, to youth, to... Yeah, you tried. Yeah, right. So please be in touch if you have a hankering for that and you would like to do that. I would invite you at this point to rise and to join in singing our sending song. Please be seated. I hope you were inspired today, and I hope it gives you pause and gives you contemplation. Hope you have time to think about this and decide how you're going to get in the way to create an environment of racial justice. God has shown us when to do justice, how to love kindness, where to walk humbly. So today when you leave, may you go forth and do so. Amen.